Hello and welcome to Million Dollar Moments, a video podcast brought to you by Channel 4 and the Professional Fighters League. I am Blake Harrison, and joining me as ever is the Einstein of MMA. He's the Isaac Newton of hand-to-hand combat. He's the one and only Dan the Outlaw Hardy. How are you, mate?
I'm good, man. I'm good, my friend. I feel like I should do that sticking out tongue face that Einstein always does.
You should, yeah. That's what you should do. Just throwing some apples up and catching them, or like a 4-ounce glove, just throwing it up and catching it.
There you go.
Newton-esque. That'd be perfect. Who knew we were going to start this show with like some kind of scientific highbrow hijinks? So I mean, look, let's get straight into it because the PFL was touched down on UK soil. They've had their first card. They were in Cardiff, and you were there. You were there, Dan. Did you?
It was amazing. It was really good. I mean, it's a great arena. The Motor Point in Cardiff's a really good arena. The setup was amazing. The cage looked great. The smart cage as well. And what I loved is everybody gets on the cage and they all plug themselves into it. It's like it's this very kind of interactive. It's like its own living thing right in the middle of the arena. Of course, the superstars there, Sean and Randy and Kenny, they were loving being in the UK. So that was great to catch up with them. And the fights were awesome. The crowd were bouncing. It was really, really good. We had some good finishes. We had some real slugfests all the way through the night. Some surprising finishes. Obviously, Delano Taylor taking out Rory and moving through to the championships. I just thoroughly enjoyed being there, and I was running around the cage all night, listening into the corners and answering questions, and great time. Really looking forward to this weekend at the Copper Box.
And the important question that everyone wants to know, Dan, is did you get a +1 to this event in Cardiff?
Oh, of course I did. Yeah. I don't go anywhere without taking Veronica. She makes sure I'm organized and makes sure I have a coffee in my hand before I fall asleep.
Because you got a +1, but my phone didn't ping. You didn't. There was no.
Well,
who's Veronica?
I know you're a busy man. I know you were.
Yeah.
You had cameras in your face.
But no, just like
you can be my date this weekend for Copper Box.
Oh, that's all right. All right, fair enough. All right, I'll bring friendship bracelets and everything. It'll be lovely. We'll have a lovely time. Right. So one of the big things about the weekend that's just gone in Cardiff, that we can't gloss over it. We can't get away from it. There were some last-minute replacements, and obviously Sheffield was a replacement for Capoloza a few weeks back because Capoloza was injured. As much as that's difficult, and we touched on this in a previous episode, it's one of the things that comes with the sport. However, Umaratov and Goltsov, both in their respective divisions, in their respective semi-finals, couldn't compete due to visa issues. As a fighter, how must that be? Because when you're thinking, I'm 2 fights away from $1 million, I'm going to go and compete in the UK, all these things, and it's not an injury, it's something that's 100% out of your control, visa issues. That's why you can't compete.
I had an opponent that was set to come in to fight me, and 2 days before the fight, he was unable to make it due to visa issues. So they switched it with somebody else who was very different. And immediately you're kind of back to the drawing board with the last 2 days to go. That's okay, though, because I still got to fight. On the other side, I remember being in the dressing room of an event in the US, and I was warming up ready to compete. I was the main event. And because the insurance ran out, they cancelled the event early. And literally the main and co-main event were the only 2 fights that didn't happen. And I'm in the dressing room, like warmed up, sweated, gloves on, mouth guard in, shorts on, literally waiting for them to call me so I can put the bandana on and walk out. And the commissioner came in and he was like, nope, that's it. Show's over. We hit midnight and the insurance had ran out. And
they only insured it until midnight.
Day, I'm like, I was at one of the Disney water parks, and I was like holding onto bars with like white knuckles because I had all this energy. I was like, this is not good. This is not healthy for me.
I can't imagine being sat on a ride at Disneyland next to a Dan Hardy that was supposed to fight less than 24 hours earlier and it got taken away from him. Anyone looked at you in the queue the wrong way was going to get it. Oh, man, that sounds horrible. Let's get on to the guy that sort of stole the show, in my opinion, anyway. Is one of those last-minute replacements. It was Delano Taylor, because he beats Rory MacDonald incredibly quickly with a right hand. I think it was that it gave me kind of Usman Masvidal type feels to it. It just really just took Rory out completely. What was your thoughts on it?
You know, I thought he looked very, very calm and relaxed, especially considering, I mean, what was his record? 9-3. He was coming in there against Rory MacDonald on short notice. You know, even if you take into account that Rory's, you know, probably, you know, towards the end of his career, or at least, you know, he is at the end of his career now, but he was stepping in, like, you know, in the twilight years of his career, looking to, you know, have that one resurgence. You still look at him and you remember the Rory MacDonald that he could potentially be at any moment. And I was surprised at how well Taylor kept his cool. He was, you know, he was calm under pressure early. You know, Rory tried to close distance very quickly. And as you said, that right hand was very, very crisp. It was so perfectly on the button. You know, when you watch it in slow-mo replays, it's like an anatomy lesson where you can kind of see the jaw move away from the skull and the head twist. And what a beautifully placed punch. It was really, really nice. And, you know, and it was even more interesting because, of course, earlier on in the night, we had Sadibou, you know, defeat Carlos Leal by decision. So we knew that Sadibou was there waiting on, you know, at the side of the cage to see who won. He already got the decision win over Rory. So in his head, he was like, if Rory wins this is looking good for me. But now we've got two tall, rangy strikers that are, you know, kind of early in their career. You know, they both had you know, less fights than the other two guys on the other side of the bracket. I think it's going to be an absolute war. I think both of them are very slick. And I think with their range and head movement, it's going to make for a very unpredictable fight to guess the outcome.
So, well, I mean, you mentioned Sadibou there. What was it about his fight against Carlos Leal that really made the difference for him in his semi-final? Because it just seemed to me that the striking was far crisper from Sadibou. What was your take on it?
Well, that was it. I mean, you know, Carlos Leal's striking was good, but the piece that he didn't have was the defensive movement afterwards. You know, if you watch Leal, if you watch Sadibou when he's backed up against the fence, he was slipping and hitting and then rolling and moving off the fence. But because Leal was the one with the shorter height and reach, the one that was trying to pressure forward and stay close to range, he wasn't thinking too much about defense. So he was swinging and allowing C to move and slip and then getting picked off in the process because, you know, he had an 8-inch reach disadvantage. Now, that's a massive asset for Sadibou. But it was also quite a dangerous game to play for C. You know, he was quite square up against the fence. He could have quite easily been, you know, found himself dealing with takedowns all night and you know, the big punches over the top. I thought his head movement and his composure in the pocket was outstanding. And you know, you've got to think, if you're fighting Carlos Leal, you don't want him that close to you, really, because he's a dangerous individual. 11-fight win streak. I was very impressed with Sadibou, defense and offense.
But we'd be remiss if we don't talk a little bit more about Rory MacDonald, because he lost this fight. It was sad to see it go like that for him. Last minute replacement, getting knocked out so quickly. But then he retires. He puts the gloves down, metaphorically speaking, because I don't think he actually did it on the night in the cage, but he retires.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, I wasn't surprised. I think I actually said to someone before the fight started, I said, I think if he doesn't win, I think it'll be the last we see of him. And as soon as the fight was over, he actually did take his gloves off in the cage, and he said, because he had Faraz in his corner, and I saw him lean over to Faraz and just say something to him, and Faraz kind of put his head down, but it almost felt like he was expecting it as well after the outcome of the fight. You know, we can't ask any more from Rory MacDonald. You know, the fights that he gave us they're legendary. You know, they will go down in history as some of the best MMA fights that you'll ever be able to watch. Time catches up with us, and you know, as we see with all these young talents that are coming through, 10, 15 fights into a career, and they could have just as much valuable experience as some of these veterans now, because they're learning from veterans. So they're taking loads of shortcuts that the likes of Rory MacDonald may not have had back in his earlier days. It's a scary thing to think, but like, the next generation is going to be even more lethal than the current one that we're watching. And if I'm Rory MacDonald, the smart thing to do is to recognize these sharks that are coming through and think to myself, I'm not I'm not quite ready to be in this pool anymore. And I'm hoping that he sticks around and passes on some of that knowledge, because he is a great coach and a great training partner. I've worked with him myself up at TriStar. I think he could really bring a lot to the sport from the outside as well. Both as an analyst, he's a very smart individual, and as a coach, the amount of experience that he's got and the respect that he's got from the other fighters as well. He could really put that to good use.
Let's move on to the heavyweights. Sheffield beats Juan Adams. Juan Adams was the replacement for Goltsov, as we mentioned. What did you think of that fight?
I thought that Sheffield played it very, very cleverly, because obviously, he was fighting a guy who is not only a strong wrestler, but he's also a huge individual. Like, just holding on to that guy, just underhooks and holding him up against the fence was exhausting for Sheffield. And if you think about the physiological strain of holding a man like that off you, like your shoulders and your biceps and triceps, they're all burning. And then you get a bit of space, and now you're expected to try and knock this guy out who's got a head like a breeze block. Like, it got to the stage at the end of the first round where I thought to myself, I don't think he's going to be able to knock Juan Adams out. And I mean, obviously he didn't. It was stopped because he was getting hit a lot, and the referee had seen enough, and it was a good call. But I think if Sheffield didn't have to defend all those takedowns in the first, I think he would have put him on the canvas. I just don't think he had the energy in his arms to put that final finishing punch on the end. I felt it myself. I fought out in Japan, and I remember fighting the guy in the third round, and I am hitting him with everything, kicks and knees and punches, and he's rocked and it's just bouncing off him. And it's a bit like a nightmare. Honestly, like, that's what I felt for Sheffield. It's like he's hitting this guy full power and he's just lumbering forward. It was a very clean performance from Sheffield, but there's no way you can get around the fact that is exhausting. Even coming out with the victory in the stoppage, he gave everything to get it.
The other fight was Leal versus Ferreira. That did not last long, and Leal just ran through him, really. I thought we were going to get, I don't know, a bit more of an interesting kind of striking contest or something. I mean, Ferreira's about 6'8" or something. And I always thinking to myself, I always think to myself, that's going to be an issue, that height, that reach, that something. And Leal just nullified it immediately.
I mean, that was the obvious game plan, really. If we all look back at it in hindsight, if you're Leal, even though you're 6'5", you're bigger than almost everybody that you fight. You look at this guy and you think, well, I know he's got lethal kicking and punching, but I also have seen him taken down and held down. And the difference with Leal and a lot of these heavyweights is that he hits you to hurt you. It was you could see the venom in those punches. You could see the excitement in Krokop's eyes in the corner as well, to be honest. Like, he was entirely tunnel vision focused on his opponent. And at any point he could create space, he was throwing very, very meaningful, like, venomous punches. And I just think it got to Ferreira. I don't think he was really, really hurt. I just think he felt like Leal was just not going to take no for an answer. Like, if it was a striking match, I could quite easily see it being a back and forth. But as soon as Ferreira hit the floor and he had Leal on top of him, just unloading those really vindictive punches, I just don't think he wants to be in there anymore. And as soon as the fight was over, I could see him kind of standing there waiting for the referee to announce the winner. And, in his corner team were having a little conversation with themselves, and he kind of looked over like he was disappointed. Like, I think he was out-beasted. And I know that's not a particularly technical thing to say, but Leal just out-beasted him. He wanted it more. He was more aggressive. He was more animalistic. He was more determined to hurt Ferreira. And even though Ferreira's the 6'8", 85-inch reach fighter, you put him on his back and those limbs become very cumbersome.
Simeon Powell, great to have you on the show, mate. How are you doing?
All good, thanks. Just
good.
In the hotel, getting ready for this fight.
You seem really, really, really relaxed for a fight week. Fight week. I'd be bouncing off the walls right now.
Yeah, no, man. Always. It's in the name, smooth. We're just smooth by nature. We're just chilling right now. Nothing too much.
So, Simeon, I always like to get to know fighters a little bit better and have audience
Yeah.
members get to know fighters a little bit better. And I always like to kind of start by asking, like, what, where you grew up and what your parents do for a living.
In a town called Harrow. Literally, my mum's a teacher. Literally, yeah, she raised me, and yeah, that's pretty much it.
So there was no kind of obvious pathway into martial arts. It's not like your mum was involved in martial arts or anything like that.
Nah, so my mum was I've always been involved with sports. My mum's an athlete. She was in the Commonwealth Games. She was an 800-meter runner. Yeah, she was an 800-meter runner. So yeah, athletics has always been a part of the family. Yeah, she was an amazing athlete, and yeah, she's kind of growing up. She always made me train hard and be the best at what I do. And yeah, so she's always installed that sort of competitive side in me.
So did she ever expect you to do like a track and field event or something, and then all of a sudden you were like, "Mum, I'm gonna fight for a living instead"?
Nah, I played football, and then what's it called? Like, yeah, I played football, I played basketball. She never really I tried athletics, but it wasn't for me. It wasn't, I don't know, it was a bit boring. You just run in one line and that was it. Do you know what I mean? So, yeah, I got into fighting when I was about 16. So MMA, I started kickboxing. Then I think a year down the line, I kind of went into MMA and then just went from there.
Were there any other sports that you thought you might end up doing professionally before you arrived at combat sports?
Sure. Well, there was a time where I was in high school. I was playing table tennis. I was playing table tennis at quite a high level as well. I also thought I could make it pro as a footballer. I just didn't have that. I think I was emotionally immature, so I wasn't ready. I would get pissed off when I took criticism, and yeah, I wasn't mature enough for it. But where I started martial arts, that helped me grow into a man. Do you know what I mean? I was able to take criticism, and yeah, and I truly had a love for it. I don't think I love any other sport like I did MMA.
Can you imagine being a table tennis player with your reach advantage? You can hit them across the table with the bat. It'd be unfair.
Yeah, I don't think so. Yeah, no, it would be a wasted talent, right?
You're 6-0 as a pro now, and you were on a 6-fight win streak as an amateur prior to that. But your first ever amateur fight, you lost that fight. Did that in any way affect you and make you think, oh God, I don't think this is for me? Or did you have any of those kind of concerns after that first fight and not winning your first fight? And how did you overcome that?
Yeah, that was an interesting one for me. It was I came into that fight and I was overconfident. I had an amateur kickboxing fight prior to that fight, and I ran through the guy. And then I took the step into going to MMA. I was just overconfident, and then there were cameras in my face, and I was just too distracted. I was looking into the crowd whilst I was fighting. Like I was not focused. So when I took that loss, I took it as it taught me a lot. I went back and it motivated me, and I haven't lost since.
And things have been working out really well for you. I mean, you won a deal with the PFL through the Challenger Series, and then you had to fight 12 days later, wasn't it? Wasn't it about 12 days later? How did that come about? Because you probably weren't expecting to fight that quickly.
No, it was a crazy story. It was, yeah. So I fought in the Challenger Series, and then obviously, like everyone does when they win a fight, they go and celebrate. So I went to Miami, and, yeah, partied a bit, and then I came back to England, and then an hour after I landed, I got a call saying we want you back out in Texas. So the next day, I was on a plane to Texas, and then I had to cut 20 pounds in like 4 days or something like that, and then fly halfway across the world. Yeah, it was tough. It was rough, but I knew I needed to do it, because doing things like that, doing things that people aren't doing, is what makes the difference, is what kind of pushes you forward in the sport. So I was like, yeah, this is a big opportunity. Let me take it.
So what's preparation been like for this fight? Obviously, you're in fight week now, so the work's done. Do you feel like you did everything you needed to in training camp? Was there anything that you added in that you've not done before?
Everyone thinks I don't have is the grappling side of things, and that's what I've been working on. Telling you, it's looking really good. I feel very confident in my grappling at the moment. So yeah, it's been quite grappling heavy, but I've not forgotten what I'm great at. You're gonna see a new version of me. I've added a lot of where I didn't have a strength and conditioning coach before. I've added that into the game as well. So I've been lifting now, so I'm a bit more powerful.
So yeah, thanks so much for coming on the show today, mate.
No, I appreciate you guys. Thank you for having me.
Cheers.
Good luck this weekend. We'll see you there.
Let's move on to the featherweight fights on the night. We've spoken a lot about Brendan Loughnane and Chris Wade. We had Chris on the show a while back as well, so you can check that out if you haven't seen that already. Our interview with Chris Wade on one of our previous episodes. You've given you kind of like a bit of a technical breakdown of this fight already. So let's just speak a little bit more about the beef, because of all the PFL fights, this seems to be the most spicy at the moment. There's not a lot of love lost there between them.
Now, I was on the media call the other week with the two guys, and they were constantly at each other. But it seems to me like Brendan knows that Chris is wound up and he's angry, and he's trying to keep him in that state to exhaust him. And I think Chris knows that Brendan's playing that game, but he's struggling to deal with that. I think he's struggling to kind of keep a lid on it and stay calm. And of course, regardless of what my opinion is of other people getting involved, that person biting at him and nipping at his heels is going to perpetuate that feeling of frustration, which, you add in the travel and then make him wait, and, all of the pressure of being away from home and being in a foreign place, and then the trash talking as well. It could definitely take some out of Chris Wade's tank, before he even gets into the fight.
If someone's like just angry and annoyed at a situation, do you really think that can like exhaust them a bit going into the fight? What's the real negatives of that? If you coach fighters, if you see one of your fighters getting really wound up by someone else, what's the worst thing you're imagining as a coach if they can't calm themselves down?
Them trying to take an opportunity that's not been properly created and then paying for it. That's my biggest concern. Like, I don't mind people, learning lessons and losing decisions and that kind of thing. But what I don't want to see is a fighter that gets wound up and they're frustrated and they lose control. They see their opponent, they go winging a big shot, and their opponent's smart enough to go, bang, and knocks them out. Because that's not a flaw in their technique. That's a flaw in their control. And as martial artists, you've got to start with control before you have anything else. Like the fighters that play those games are the ones that are some of my favorites. Like a lot of people always talk about the fight between myself and Marcus Davis. And as you'll probably remember, we were at each other constantly, but there was only one of us that was in control of that situation. Unfortunately, it was me, because I wasn't angry, but I was making him angry. And by the time the fight arrived, he was so wound up. There was so much pressure on his shoulders. Even his corner man between rounds was saying, "You're one round away from shutting him up." It was like a whole, the whole purpose of him winning the fight was not to win and to progress. It was to beat me. And that's not a healthy mindset to go into it. And on the other side, because I'm having fun with this, I'm even more relaxed seeing him become unraveled. And I would imagine Brendan's in the same place. The only one thing that's going to hit home, and that's if you've talked loads and loads of trash, you wake up on fight day and you realize how big of a hole you've dug for yourself if it doesn't work out. And that comes with pressure as well. But I don't think Brendan's going to be too bothered about that. I think he's enjoying this.
Loughnane's the hometown boy, and also there's the added beef between him and Chris Wade. But we got Ryochi Kudo versus Bubba Jenkins, and Kudo lost to Brendan Loughnane in the first night, but it was one of those, like, it was a technical decision. It was because of the cut above the eye, like sort of early-ish on in the third round, I think. So they had to take the scorecards from all 2 and a bit rounds, really, wasn't it? I think it's very plausible that Ryoichi Kudo doesn't see that as a legitimate loss because the fight was kind of sort of taken out of his hands a little bit. And then in his second fight, unbelievable KO against Flores. Bubba Jenkins, on the other hand, had dominant kind of wins over Karl Bochniak and Ronaldo Exon. Different styles there, it seems. How do you see that one going?
This is the sleeper on the card because, Bubba Jenkins, he's very familiar to PFL fans and to MMA fans. He's been around for a long time. He's got a very, very strong wrestling base, which I would imagine he's going to lean on in this fight. But Kudo's he's the unknown commodity in this bracket. Of course, it's going to be difficult for Kudo to get through Bubba Jenkins' wrestling, but I also think that there's a lot of skills in that kid's game that we haven't seen yet. We know he's got power in his hands. We know he can scramble and hustle like he did against Brendan. If he's able to get past Bubba Jenkins, he positions himself as in a really interesting place as the unknown fighter that everyone's got their eyes on. I'm just fascinated by him because I feel like I've only seen like into like a small part of his game, and there's a lot more there that we've just not dug into yet. And someone like Bubba Jenkins is going to really force him to work hard. And we're going to see some of those other skills.
Brilliant. Well, can't wait for that. And then the other thing, the sort of, in a lot of ways, the star attraction is in the women's lightweight division. Is there any way that Jindrova can go into this fight with huge confidence because of the trajectory that she's on, and also with a sense of freedom because no one's going to be expecting her to win? So with those two things, the confidence, maybe a sense of freedom, can she surprise Kayla or do something that Kayla's not expecting to just catch her off guard?
I certainly think so. Of course, that Kayla's going to be a huge favorite, but with that, the expectations of her winning, it forces a lot of people to count out her opponent. And I don't think for a second that Kayla's overlooking her opponent in any way. But this is an MMA fight, and Kayla has to close the distance to get her hands on Jindrova, and that's not going to be an easy thing to do. She's got good striking, she's got fast hands, she's very aggressive. She's very good at kind of bailing out of clinch situations and creating space for more strikes. And anytime you close in distance, you can get caught with a few shots and even get kind of flustered and startled for a moment. I'm always on the side of the fighter that's coming in with no pressure on their shoulders because they have nothing to lose, and that usually allows people to compete a little bit more relaxed and a bit more freely because they don't feel that pressure that they've got to do something specific. She has to do something. It doesn't really matter what she does. If she can stuff takedowns, people will be impressed. If she can land good strikes, people will be impressed. If she can scramble back to her feet once Kayla's taken her down, people will be impressed. So the benchmark for her to be successful in this one, although of course she wants to win, she's also setting herself up for future fights. She's only had 3 fights in PFL, as you said. Split decision, unanimous decision, stoppage. She's getting better each time. But this might not be her season, but it might be. And, if she comes in and beats Kayla Harrison, all eyes are going to be on her in November.
Absolutely. Yeah. And, Kayla Harrison, very used to winning in London as well, picked up a gold medal for judo at the London 2012 Olympics. I actually saw a statistic, I think it was on one of the PFL broadcasts, that she hadn't lost in a sport since 2016. I don't know if they're including like family games of ping pong or game of pool down the pub and all that or anything, but that's quite something, isn't it? Not lost in sports since 2016.
That's ridiculous. And the reality is, even if you do beat her at Monopoly or Tiddlywink, she's going to pick you up and slam you to the floor and beat you up. So you ultimately don't win at the end of the day anyway. So you might as well let her win at all the other games.
Yeah, you don't want to win at Christmas, nothing. Don't win at anything when Kayla Harrison's there. Right, well, the other fight on the card in the main kind of semi-finals is Larissa Pacheco versus Elena Kolesnyk. Pacheco, as we mentioned before, the only fighter in any division to reach maximum points in the regular season. She got 2 quick sixes. She got 12 points. She's the top seed in that division, even though that division has Kayla Harrison in it. She's the top seed.
She's basically beaten everybody but Kayla Harrison. That's that's the thing we've got to remember is, you know, she's the favorite in this one because she's scary and she's beaten everybody up pretty easily. But even if she gets through to the final and Kayla Harrison's there to meet her, she'll still be the underdog against Kayla. But then, you know, Kolesnyk coming in, if she's able to stop, you know, Pacheco, there are questions around her. Okay, now how does she deal with the winner of the other bout? I'm all for being surprised. I do find Larissa Pacheco quite scary though, and genuinely, I think if she was in my bracket, I would have my eye on her because I know that at least for the first 5 minutes of the fight, it is going to be horrendously difficult to keep her off because she's aggressive. She knows she's got punching power. Usually, when you watch Pacheco, you know, knocking her opponents out, she's thrown at the same time as they are. And they're the first ones to decide that they don't want to throw punches anymore. They just want to block. And that's how you know that in those power exchanges, she's impactful. And I think that will be the difference in this one. I think if I'm Kolesnyk, I want to kind of slow this down. I want to play smart at this one. I want to tie her up, hold her against the fence, you know, use head position and a body lock and just try and stifle her as much as I could, as I could for the first round. And then hopefully, you know, I could start to wear her down after that. Conditioning is going to be a big key for this one because she can't trade power with Pacheco.
Dan, mate, I think that's all we have time for, bud. I can't wait for PFL this Saturday at the Copper Box. I'm going to be there. You're going to be there. I'm bringing friendship bracelets, you know, maybe we'll have a drink afterwards. It's going to be great.
Sounds good. Sounds good. It's going to be a great night. And these fights are going to really deliver. You know, Brendan is bouncing off the walls right now. Chris Wade's clenching his fists like he's ready to punch holes through walls.
He's like you at the water park in Disney.
Exactly. Know how he feels. At least he's got the opportunity to fight this weekend, and Brendan's going to bring it. So I'm buzzing for it.
Oh, well, there's a lot to look forward to this weekend with the PFL coming to London. Can't wait for it. Dan, thanks so much for your time, and we'll see you next time.
See you at the weekend, mate.